Hello, everyone, and welcome to Integrated Rhythm 2 Swing Dancing Besties. That's Chisomo Salamani and myself, Bobby White, navigating race and the Black experience in swing dancing and jazz dances and all Afrocentric dances, by the way. This week, we're honored to have Brandon Barker. Brandon Barker is a badass. He's currently doing a BFA at the University of Massachusetts in dance, and we were honored he took time out of his incredibly busy schedule to chat. When he's not neck deep in a fine arts program, he works at Alvin Ailey, the legendary Black American dance company, and is a passionate Lindy Hopper and Jazz dancer who calls New York City his home. We're also honored, by the way, to have him in our New York City performance group, the Harvest Moon Hoppers. In today's conversation, we will talk about where all those roads crisscross and converge. So get ready for a conversation that will give you insight into contemporary dance training and teaching and how it relates and doesn't relate to the world of swing.
Rhythm, integrated rhythm with your soul and body. One more time. Rhythm, integrated rhythm with your soul and body. Yeah.
You alluded to your life right now. Like, what's it like being a college student as you are, right? So you are a contemporary dance major, and then you're also doing some work at Alvin Ailey. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Alvin Ailey work came from when I was in high school, and my freshman year of high school at Ailey, I was doing ballet, Horton technique, which is a part of modern or a style of modern, and then there was a little bit of West African I was doing. We hadn't hit jazz yet. That was what's it called, junior year and senior year. But my introduction to Lindy was around that time. It was actually it was at Black River Dance Studio in Harlem. I lived in Harlem at the time, and it was Clyde Wilder. I took his class, so he's really the one who introduced me, and it was his girlfriend, now wife, Malin, took me with her, and my mom encouraged me to go. So I know the question wasn't the origins of Lindy for you, but I'm just like, I was like, all right, since we're in the Alvin Ailey territory, I might as well loop it into Lindy and how I got started. So that was the start. And then from there, I met Sam, who, had me go to his classes, and then that evolved into everything I do now. And Sam's kind of taken more of he's just like a big brother to me. Like, we're past like the mentor apprentice type of connection. Like he's just kind of like, my older brother at this point. And so those are the techniques at that time. And now at University of Massachusetts Amherst, abbreviated version, UMass Amherst. It's my Bachelor of Fine Arts in dance. You can either do a BA or BFA. So, Bachelor of Arts, but in my case, Bachelor of Fine Arts requires a little more requirements, right. In terms of how the world, views your dance experience when you leave. You have more under your belt. And so within this, I'm doing, ballet, modern, jazz, contemporary, composition class, which is like learning how to do choreography, how to make choreography. Right. And then the rest it's like a compilation of whatever you want. So I added hip hop in there, I added house in there. I did one semester where we had a really diverse class, and we took each person's style that they grew up with, or style that that they perfected, and we performed it in different venues. This is like pre-COVID, obviously. It was really cool, yeah. And it was, so we had, one group, her name was Wamia, that was one of them, and then her friend, but they did Bollywood style. And so we took that and we did it at like a retirement center, and they loved it. And I, of course, did Lindy by that time. So I taught them Lindy, partnering Lindy, and we did it at a school. We even went to a place where it was like girls, it was like a corrections space for young females who had, did small, simple wrongdoings. And we're just at the center to like clear their mind and just steer themselves away from violence. We did, I think, Lindy for them and some Bollywood. But it was cool because that was essentially just like a melting pot of, people's different ideas, and Lindy fit into it perfectly. I'm glad the class was diverse. I joked with one of my friends in the class, I was like, can you imagine if like it was just all of us, like, you know, like generic people, and we were like, we're just gonna do the whip and nay for the whole, you know, the whole time. So like it would have just like not worked if you know, we all didn't have like our own cultural background that we felt really confident and comfortable in. So we're on the tangent, but that class stands out a lot, right? So yeah, like I said, outside of those four pillars, the ballet, the modern, the jazz, the comp, and the contemporary. So that's five pillars. Outside of that, it was like all electives.
That's really cool. I love the eclectic nature of that class, and then also you said nothing of the instructor, but I'm assuming the instructor was basically like, bring what you know. And so the fact that there was an instructor that was so open, saying, okay, we have like all these different influences and voices from all over the world, let's do it. Like, that's amazing.
I got so excited when you said Clyde Wilder. For those of you listening, Clyde Wilder was a important dancer, a partner of Mickey Davidson, who trained with Frankie and Norma back in the 80s. How was that? What was it like working with Clyde Wilder?
Yeah, my goodness, I remember going to his class, and you know, he just threw me right in, right? We just dived in, went for it. And I think I needed that at the time, because it was my first time dealing with like unstructured improv dance, right? Prior to that, it was very much like, you know, when you're at the bar in ballet, it's like the teacher does the combo real quick. You have a very short amount of time to get that wired into your brain, and you just do it, you know? And so that was the wiring of my brain for a while, was to just watch and do in a very quick manner. You know, and those skills, of course, have their advantage in certain places, but, you know, Clyde's class was the first time I was able to like really comfortably break out of that. And I was comfortable even though I knew I wasn't good yet at the steps, right? I wasn't yet good at Lindy. Like I knew that, like, in looking at myself in the mirror, I knew my Shorty George was weird. I had to get it together, but like I still felt comfortable just because I knew I could like improv and have fun.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of improvising even when you don't feel like, you're like, I know that there's learning to do, but I'm comfortable in my body doing this. That's really cool.
What was it? What are some of those different approaches that you've gotten in all those dances and in the jazz dances and Lindy Hop? Can you expound a little bit more about like what some of the differences are to a student of those dances in your case?
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
love that.
So like a student in like my contemporary world as opposed to like being a student in Lindy world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were talking about the 5 different pillars, like what's that? Because you talked about jazz in there, and maybe what's that like in comparison to what you experience in like our social dance space?
Oh yeah.
Is that kind
Right.
of Bobby? Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I can composite everything that was just said into like one, so don't worry. Yeah, in terms of like, yeah, jazz, and like the perception of that in the classroom, and then just how I did it in the Lindy Hop scene in New York. The jazz I started with was very, it was like concert dance jazz, but you could tell it was kind of like Black Broadway jazz. So we had that, or I felt like I had that advantage, right? Or to me, it felt like an advantage. I had that under my belt from my teacher, right? Where it was clearly like Black Broadway jazz. And you could picture something like Cabin in the Sky while you're doing it, or, you know, even something like After Midnight, which was a, you know, Broadway show for a little bit, right? So I kind of felt like I was in one of those while I was doing it. So that was at Ailey. That was the style I did there. I guess we can bring it even back before Ailey, when I was in, I think, 3rd grade. So way before I was ever introduced to Lindy, we did like a mix of jazz and hip hop. So I remember I had that under my belt a little bit. And I remember, you know, performing some of that and and doing some of that on the school stage. But also I remember one time we went to like all the different schools, brought together the kids, and we all just went like a big gymnasium and just danced, so I still think of those memories pretty fondly as like kind of my intro to jazz, but also like intro to, hip hop now. And then, fast forward to my jazz in UMass, or at UMass Amherst. That one was kind of more of like a contemporary meets jazz mix. So those two kind of fused, right? And it became like a mixture of those two. But yeah, again, those were very much based in like warm up, right? And it's funny, all the jazz classes have the same warm up of isolations. That's like the one thing that where they all can connect. Like you isolate, your chest forward, side, back, side, roll, and then head, look the other way and roll it. So the isolations can connect to all of those. We always loosened up the body in that same way. So it's good to know that, whichever branch of jazz you're teaching, Latin jazz, Afro jazz, like they all have that commonality. There's an understanding of like isolate the body, loosen up, free your torso, free your pelvis, and get ready to like really, throw yourself in whatever. But the one at the university, yeah, certainly very same as, earlier, right? It's like you're taught a long strand of choreography and you break it down into little bits, and then you like combine it all. And within that, you're trying to show yourself and be creative and not spend the whole time going, I hope I remember it. I hope I don't like look at the teacher and then like forget it because I see the teacher, nodding or smiling. It's like a common mistake between me and all my friends. We always do that thing where we're like, I looked at the teacher, I got psyched out because she was a good job. And then for some reason, my body just forgot what the combo was because she said good job. And you get like psyched out, right? So yeah, there's always that feeling of like, all right, you're learning this big strand of choreography. Remember to insert yourself in it, right? I think those were the jazz classes. I think out of all of them were the ones where it had the most personality, right? Certainly more than ballet, right? It's like here's your structure of how you need to do this. Certainly, a little more than modern because there's within each style of modern. The one I do at UMass Amherst is called Limon, which is from a man named Jose Limon. And the idea behind it is like weight shifting and really falling into your weight and, having your weight be an ally rather than something you're afraid of. Like you allow your weight to take you through the dance. And, if you YouTube it and watch it, it'll make more sense. But yeah, you're not fearing your weight in Limon, right? So that's how you do that. But jazz, those classes were always where you could find some sense of yourself in it, right? Like, so if you're kind of sliding back and the teacher does the arms in a certain way, but I want to do like the let it rain cleared out, like chicken noodle soup, you could do that, right? It's not really like, the teacher thankfully isn't really going to be like, no, it's done like this, right? Which is certainly like, you can't just break that out in ballet and chasse pas de bourrée, glissade, assemblée, right? Like, and you learn that quickly as a kid. You're like, oh, this is not the place for that, for me to just like do that.
Yeah.
So you've taken jazz at both Ailey and at UMass, is that correct?
Yeah.
What are some of the differences between the way it was taught? Was there any differences between the way it was taught between those two places?
Mm-hmm. I think at Ailey, there was definitely a sense of a little bit of a sense of more flashiness, right? Like split leaps in the air where you your feet start going in one way and then you switch them mid-air. And so now your right foot, which is in the front doing a split, is now at the back. And so, doing quick split leaps, and certainly the flashiness of it was there, right? The presentation and the performance of it with, the double turns and the kicks and the slides and the splits. So there was that flashy performative sense with the Ailey one. Whereas with the one at UMass, like I said, there was more contemporary feeling to it. And it was, slightly more relaxed, but again, you always get to add your personality into it, and put how you felt you could interpret it in there. Yeah.
I'm going to possibly embarrass myself. when I was in college, I got interested in swing dancing right at the very end of high school. And when I went to college, I knew all of a sudden I was really passionate about Lindy Hop. And so I was also in the theater program at my college. That was my major. And so I was basically, I realized, I should be taking dance classes, especially because I have PE credits that I need to take care of. And that would give me a chance to like improve my dancing. Now, my college was on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, and about 1,200 people attended this school. And hardly, so that's a way of saying that this was not a professional dance program, and it was good, solid dance program. But specifically, they only had one instructor for all the dances, and she was very upfront and honest about saying when she would walk into class, she's like, "Jazz." I would take jazz classes. I didn't take ballet. I took jazz and tap, and when I would walk in, she was very upfront about saying, "I'm a ballerina. Here we go." And so like,
at least you got that, before you started, at least you got the fair warning, right?
Yeah,
Rather than like, they really trick themselves and be like, I know what I'm doing. And then like misinformation just like gets spread to everyone.
And so to this day, if I were to do any of my jazz dancing for you, you'd be like, definitely looks like there's a little bit of ballet in there. And if I did like my tap dancing, you'd be like, that's a lot of ballet for tap. That's a lot of ballet for tap. But hey, I did it.
Yeah, you did it. Look at that. But I think, I've heard stories about that too from a couple of my friends who grew up in like competition backgrounds, right? Where it wasn't necessarily the structure of the technique. It was like you need to win this. So it was more about like what I was talking about earlier, like the flashy and performative side. But the one that I was doing was more like, they were really, really trying to push your technique. Whereas with my friends who grew up in like the performance backgrounds and those types of settings, it was really like, we're trying to get you to win. So it was like, we're plucking pieces from things and you just need to like do those really well. But there was no sense of historical context, right? And the teacher didn't really need to like be an expert in it. It's like, we're just plucking them and we're throwing them onto you. You do it well and you win, right? And that I didn't really get introduced to all that until I came to UMass, because in New York, we have all the resources, right? So usually no one gets bogged down like that, where it's like, I like this one teacher's teaching everything, and or like, oh man, there's this dance studio and like the hip hop teacher, clearly they just like shoot them in, right? So you have all the resources, but in other instances, right, with the friends I was talking to, or like, Bobby, in your sense, like it's limited resources, right? And so it's like, if there's a demand for hip hop, do you as staff just be honest and be like, look, we'll find a way to raise funds to make you guys do a trip to New York so you can, take a class with some hip hop icon or legend from there? Or do you go, okay, we'll fit in a paycheck for someone, right, with good intentions to make sure they're doing well, but like as a result, like what they're teaching isn't the most, accurate thing, right? So it's definitely tricky, and it opened up my eyes, like hearing other dance experiences, right? Hearing that like other people's wasn't just a straight linear path of like, I take classes, then I evolve into more classes, and then they let you perform, and then maybe you're good enough where you can start teaching, and you do a gig and you get paid. Like, it's not that same route for everyone, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And to be fair, for my situation, one of the cool things about my situation is that first off, she was an awesome person, and she would do things like, because we were such a small group of students, she would give us the code to the dance studio. So like I could be in there at like Friday night at 2 a.m. If I wanted to, working on stuff. The other thing that she did is she loved Lindy Hop. Like when she knew I was really interested in that, and she like pushed me to, hold on just a second.
I was going to say, I feel like Zoom is a really nice thing these days, right? The pandemic, one of the joys of the pandemic is access to resources that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so I think the combination of having an instructor like Bobby's that's like invested in their students and students learning and allowing them to bring what they're interested in into the classroom, you can combine that with like access to other resources with Zoom. But anyway, but Bobby, I'm assuming that we had an ambulance and
Well, we had a motorcycle group go by, which also happens.
okay. But
Okay.
so you were talking about your teacher and like these incredible things, these gifts.
Yeah. And so she like pushed me to like get together groups to do Lindy Hop performances, and I went balls to the wall. It was so dangerous, y'all. It was so dangerous. We would watch Hell's a Poppin', and we'd be like, let's try it, and we would just like try the thing, and we did not die. Amazingly, in hindsight, none of us got really hurt. Maybe because we were young and rubber, but basically, because she was so supportive of that, and maybe too supportive based on how dangerous what we were doing was. But anyway, like that really allowed, anyway, shout out to my school and their dance program.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, there's definitely something useful in terms of like having that rigor and that spirit to just throw yourself in it, right? Like that's definitely like useful, right? So like taking that and transferring it into a space where, you're with a Lindy legend or someone that actually knows, it definitely is something that, comes in handy, right? I think that was how, when Frankie made the first air step or when contributed to the first air step, I try to keep it open-ended. I'm like, maybe I don't just straight up say he did it, like, he was part of the contribution to it. He was just practicing with his partner. I remember it says in his book, I have to reread it. I think it's been like 4 years now. So I have to reread Frankie's book, but he's talking about, practicing it and just going for it, right? And just, you have to have that rigor to be like, what if? You have to ask that what if, and then just kind of go from there. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was really glad that Brandon was with, Brandon we're very honored and proud to have Brandon take part in our performance group in New York. And he got to come when Crystal trained us. At least he was able to make it to a little bit. I think he had some stuff going on that day. But he was able to come to some of it. And I guess you remember her having that very similar spirit. Like she was getting us to do neck flips and stuff by just saying, do it.
Yeah. Like, they're just like, that's how it is, right? Like, you see and then go for it. Like, cause I think that's definitely fair, right? Cause it's like at a certain point, the only thing holding you back is like fear or a lack of trust. So, her approach was like, at this point you trust your partner. You guys have been dancing, halfway through today. So just like go for it at this point.
Yeah. And just for listeners, we're referring to Crystal Johnson, and we have a whole podcast episode with her. She's an elder in the Lindy Hop scene. So yeah. Bobby and Brandon, your Harvest Moon Hoppers is amazing. I know I love watching the Harvest Moon Hoppers. You do all go for it in performances. I've seen it in performances and practices. You're like, we're going to do the thing. It's cool.
I remember, so we just, we did a project in the fall where everyone got to film a jam to send in. I remember seeing Brandon's for the first time, who sent in a solo jam. And I was just like, damn, it has looking good. And then like a few months later, he sent me a choreography he was teaching at the time. And I was like, damn. So Brandon, so you've now been teaching some. What's the experience like being on the other side of Lindy Hop students, especially coming from your background in class, we would say conservatory training? Is that what would we say?
Concert dance, right? No? Yes, no?
We could say like BFA training, if that encompasses all of it. I think,
Yes.
I think that can cover all of it. Yeah. Bobby, I just pictured you like the dam getting longer. So then I saw this and I was like, damn. And I saw this and it was like, damn. Like I just pictured it getting longer each time.
Yeah, wait till you send me the next one. It's going to get even longer.
Yeah.
Right. I know. I have to show you the meme if you haven't seen it. someone maybe you've seen of the Friday movie. It's just Ice Cube and Chris.
Yeah.
They're leaning back. Damn! I'm like, I gotta, yeah.
Yeah,
That reminded me of that.
I was thinking of The Wire and shit, and how that's just gotten longer and longer and longer. And if you watch the history of curse words, I think on Netflix, yeah. Anyway, but you were talking about also, by the way, a BFA is no joke. As somebody who lives on a college campus, a BFA is so much work.
Well, doesn't it stand for like bad fucking ass? Am I mistaken? Is that not what it sounds like? I thought that was what it was.
It can be interpreted that way. I feel like when they hand you the diploma, they should be like, this Bachelor of Fine Arts certifies you as a bad fucking ass. Like, like here's your diploma. Here's, that's what you are.
Yeah. But you were talking about being a teacher, being a dance educator now, what that's like, especially teaching two Lindy Hoppers. Is that what you were saying, Bobby?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So teaching other Lindy Hoppers, with that comes a sense of wanting to open their eyes to something that you feel like they probably don't know from this, from the scene already, or something that you feel like gets overlooked, right? Because it's like, okay, you're teaching, have agency, to maybe address something you think that gets overlooked, or just speak your mind about, general things that you find are happening in the Lindy world, and you want to address or say, so there's definitely, it gives you room to do that, right? And I think also there's a component of like, if you're teaching with a partner. So when I, teach with Shanna, who's like my dance sister at this point, or like just my sister, period. Like, with that comes like, you have to balance, both of the personalities, because we both are very energetic and full of life. So you have to, if you're teaching with a partner, which isn't the case these days, in like 95% of the time, you're thinking about like, okay, balancing our personalities, finding ways that can easily complement each other, adding on to a point that like Shanna made or my partner made, right? And like giving that more context, right? And giving it more emphasis. But yeah, usually when it comes to like people who I know are Lindy Hoppers or in the scene, I'd use that time to be like, hey, open your eyes to all this stuff that you might be overlooking or might not be at the forefront of your brain, right? When it comes to like the scene, historical context, execution of the movement, right? So I try to think about all that. And then I guess to flip the script, and like when you're teaching people that aren't experienced in Lindy Hop, I always try, well, there's two ways I approach it. If it's like a one-off, which are usually like an hour and a half, I'm like, I put like the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm like, you have an hour and a half to open their eyes up to Lindy, spark some form of interest so they go off and branch off and do it somewhere, and they keep that interest, right? So I put like a big burden on myself on purpose. I'm like, they have to, not that they have to be professional after this, but like I feel like I need the need to pique their interest in some way.
This is possibly the one time they will be like shown, introduced to this dance.
Yeah.
In their entire career, because, the original jazz dances aren't, they don't come across people's paths as often as the main concert dances, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, right? So knowing that too, right? Like you said, Bobby, knowing that like for a couple of them, like, yeah, this might be their only like run-in with Lindy, right? So give it all you've got, right? And so by that point, I usually, go over, have the balance that'll guide you through everything, right? Here's the historical context, here's people to look up. I'll like show how's the pop in just to get them excited, right? And just so they see it at its prime, at its very peak, right? Like that almost makes your job easier with that like one-off class, because they see it at its prime, its peak, and they're like, that's amazing. Like just to know that it can get there if you get good enough, right? And so it helps a little bit. And then usually it's a tonal shift because I do go into like the racial context of everything happening in those days. So there is a bit of a, oh, that's right. Like they have a revelation. They're like, yeah, like, okay, yeah, you make a good point. You almost get caught up in the excitement of what's happening. You forget when they say cut, they go back to their like regularly scheduled lives, and so much is happening, for them as Black people at that time. So, there's that component. So you're also juggling their emotions too, right? Like with those classes. And yeah, you're trying to get the foundation, the bounce, introducing them to the 8 count, the 6-step, and putting it in the linear rotation of, a swing out in the linear kind of route that it is. But then you also want to get their creativity in there, right? So you want to pique their interest with creativity. So, and also have them understand the rhythm, have that be a component. So usually I'll clap the rhythm, and then I'll play a couple songs, we'll clap it together, and then I'll stop helping them and they have to find the beat by themselves, and I'll put on random songs, like find the 8 count, like find your way through it, and then start doing the 8 count, to it, and things like that, right? So that's the usual routine.
And specifically there, you were talking about your students that are like from concert backgrounds?
Yeah, this is sometimes like adults, right, who are just trying. And then usually, yeah, for the ones with the concert backgrounds, it's the same feeling. It's kind of like a web that branches in different directions, right? So I was talking about specifically like the one-offs, right? Which can either be adults, or they can be those like students who, like it's not part of their curriculum. Like they have so much other stuff to do. They're not going to drop everything and become suddenly super invested in it, right? Unless if they do, great. But, they have priorities. So with them, you have a sense of like, okay, they know how to move. So you feel more comfortable like pushing through it faster because they have an ability to retain movement, and they have experience doing that, right? They have experience, just like me, being at the bar, seeing something quickly, do it, and just doing it, right? So they can do that. So you almost throw them in a little faster, just out of love, you're like, you can do it, right? So there's that.
You heard enough, and now it's time for the break.
Hey everyone, we here at Integrated Rhythm love supporting Black businesses. Why? Because if capitalism has been against Black people for so long, one of the ways we can help them rise up again is through capitalism. So throw some money at their community, please. This week, our Black business that we'd like to spotlight happens to be a swing dancer. So there's thousands of more reasons why you should support them to help give the scene more life and energy, because it is Julia Loving, the amazing Julia Loving, the, dare I say it, loving Julia Loving. And she is the owner and proprietor of Lucky Lindy's, which is a comfortable, form-fitting undergarment made of high-quality spandex. They were designed to be worn under all types of dresses and skirt styles, and pants, by the way. They are light, and they've got sturdy sewing because they know what you're going to put them through. And I even hear rumors of secret pockets that you can hold secrets in. They have all sorts of colors and patterns. They're killing it. You should check them out. And they even have these amazing sparkling cutters that are sparkling colors that are fantastic for those performers out there who want to show some sparkle. You can find Julia Loving's Lucky Lindy's at Lucky Lindy's NYC Etsy store. That's right. Go to Etsy, type in Lucky Lindy's, LINDYS NYC, click, and you'll go there and you'll love it. Hey everybody, this is Bobby White from Integrated Rhythm. We're here to ask you to please consider donating to the podcast. You can do so by going to patreon.com/integratedrhythm. You can do so by Venmoing at Bobby Swungover. And make sure to put a little IR in the note so we make sure it goes to the right people. You can also do so by PayPaling at BobbyWhite3. And once again, putting a little IR in the window there. Doing so will help us keep this podcast going, and we love doing it, and we hope you love it too. If you can't afford to donate at this time because times are rough, we totally understand. We don't want you to put yourselves out. We want you to keep enjoying the podcast for free. However, if you have a little bit of pocket change in your pocket, we would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thanks and have a great day.
The break is over, now it's back to the show.
What are some of the things that's really hard to get a concert dancer to do right with like the original jazz dances?
Let's see. I would say getting comfortable in the bounce. So you can tell sometimes with the bounce through, introducing them to the 8 count or 6 count or just grooving, you can tell they're like consciously thinking about it. And I tell them, I'm like, it'll eventually become an unconscious thing that's just part of your movement, right? Like at some point it might even backfire if you overthink it. Like your Suzy Q, if you're thinking too much about it as you're, during the Suzy Q, like it might backfire. You might look crazy. So like, start it while it's in the beginning stages and we're just playing around, and then let it become an unconscious natural habit of your body, right? Even when I try to show now these days, I'm like, here's how this move is without the bounce, right? Like I usually can't do it because I'm so used to doing it with the bounce that I'm just like, pretend I'm not bouncing, right? So that's one aspect, having them get comfortable with that, because a lot of the ones I've taught in my experience so far are usually like ballet or modern, right? So everything's very upright. So introducing them to like, now get down, now stay down there, like, be one with the ground, sink into the ground, rather than, kind of a combo from ballet where you're shooting your legs up second, changement, right? It's up. It's like, no, it's down now, stay down, right? And so I haven't yet had experience like teaching people who have like a very established like hip hop background. I feel like that would be fun and interesting because like that message might get across easier, right?
Oh.
And
that reminds me. So like I got to see when I was in DC and Tasha and I were both there at the same time. I was taking classes with her and her group, and so like house and hip hop both have their own idea of the bounce, and in house it's that jack idea.
Yep.
And I got to see exactly that come in motion. I got to see hip hop dancers. I got to see Latasha and I showing hip hop dancers some of the moves and getting to see them dance. And it's so fascinating that like the jack, and at least in the dancers that we saw, the jack and the whatever you would call it in hip hop, they kept that and kept it to the swing. But what it did is it made them not movable, especially the followers, because that jack and that swing would really take them into the hip hop stuff. It was really interesting. I'm not describing it the best, but it was really fascinating to see them do hip hop and house to swing rhythms and have it be a different beast, but still swing. Like that was the other thing, is like, I was like, that is dancing to this music. Like that is totally valid, and it looked different than the way we do it. It was just really cool.
Yeah, no, that sounds really awesome. Like a very like natural cultural exchange, right? Where like they perfectly like Tetris blocks would just perfectly fall into each other. Like they just line up, right? Rather than like a crash. Like, and it's interesting because I'm like doing the opposite right now in my senior thesis, where it's a hip hop song. It's Past That Dutch by Missy Elliott, but I'm having them start with Lindy to that song, but I'm like giving the Lindy some of the hip hop swagger so that it matches the song a little more. So that's been an interesting exploration, right? Taking the hip hop the Lindy, and infusing it with the feeling and the bounce, and the swagger of hip hop, and, realizing how simultaneously they can connect with each other.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, that's been interesting. I'm still developing it now, right? It's almost a finished product.
Hey.
So it's almost there. I think, was it the date for when it's finally streamed? We're streaming it on Vimeo instead of Zoom. So obviously I'll remind everyone it happens, but I think it's like April 28th right now. Last week of April was happening. So it's still evolving now as we speak, but that's one portion of the whole thing. But it's one that I've been excited about. So
That's
When
awesome. The one thing I wanted to add was that the description that you talked about in terms of mobility and groundedness is a struggle that I've had with having African dancing as a more primary piece, being so connected to the ground and so into the ground, and that like the I've had to actually tell myself, I'm like, you have to move in Lindy. Like you don't get to be grounded in the same way. And so you have, anyway, so it's hearing the experiences with hip hop dancers and like that mobility piece seems interesting as well.
yeah, that's interesting too. Like, because you don't even think that it might backfire sometimes, where it's like, no, you're in the ground, but now move.
Yeah.
So that is, yeah, that must be like or must have been an interesting journey when you're first kind of trying to like play around with, okay, what do I keep from this, and then what do I kind of just, put on a temporary shelf because I'll use it later. It's a part of me, right? Like I've even done that with some aspects of my ballet technique with hip hop, because I think it's good to like the transition from ballet to hip hop. At first, I thought it was like I thought I was at such a disadvantage, of course, right, of not having much hip hop under my belt and more ballet. But like the rigidness and the way your body gets disciplined through ballet is actually super useful for hip hop, right? Especially if you're doing something like popping or locking, because like the way your body is supposed to hit a very certain stance in a very specific way in ballet, you can transfer that over to popping and locking, and even just like the party dances, the old school, new school of hip hop, like within that groove, like how to hit something sharp because you've been doing that in ballet, right? And you maybe how to jump really well. Maybe there's certain moves where it's really about kind of the bringing it up and then getting on down, and how to get high from doing a lot of ballet jumps and a lot of changements or exercises where you're going up in the air, right? So that's like the stuff you keep, but then like I was, or like you were saying, like maybe stuff that you shelve, right? That's obvious, or in ballet, like bend your knees, so none of the erect stance from ballet, and straight knees, right? And feet close to each other. So that's the stuff that you shelf, like you were talking about. Like you gotta like let yourself move and not be in one place, but you keep the part where you're in the ground.
Yeah. You mentioned Tetris earlier, which made me for some reason think Legos. And I know people are like, what? Okay. But like having different aspects of your dancing or your movement or your vocabulary be like Lego pieces that you can shift and move. You actually just opened up a channel in my brain about, because I've been thinking about what it means to be your whole self every time you show up in a dance. And you talked about how jazz allows space for that. The different jazz classes that you've done, you were able to still be yourself. But like, it sounds like you've kind of like, you have worked the system to know like, okay, this is how I express myself in ballet and contemporary and in jazz, and these are the aspects that can come together in this space. Like it's just a really cool skill that you seem to really be adept in. So that's cool.
Yeah, I try, man. I think you like, I remember at Ailey we had like back to back like ballet then jazz, which was like physically and psychologically hard, because then you have to like rewire your brain to be like, all right, go from sitting up straight to bending, and like go from like rigid turns and sucking in your glutes and tucking your abdomen to like letting that go and isolating, right? So that was definitely a tricky transition, right? But through that you tell yourself like, okay, like everything I just got from ballet, understanding to like suck in and keep that rigidness then sometimes I'm hard on myself because I'm like, I'm not hitting these pirouettes. And you got to do that. I know you just came from a jazz class, but like now it's time to be up and time to like, so like you said, like switching the channels that you're in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How so if you went from a primarily choreography based dancing experience and then got into jazz, what was it like for you learning the art of improvisation for the first time?
I remember when I really got to cut loose. I think it was a back to back Thursday Friday experience. Thursday was Fram and Friday was Swing 46, and those were back in New York, and those were being at those two spaces was like the first time where we're just like I unapologetically cut loose, and like just someone brought up earlier, where it's like maybe you know that there's stuff they're gonna work on in the future, but in the moment you don't really care, you're having fun. There was definitely that aspect of just like knowing, especially as a trained dancer, knowing like you got to work on that, like that, like good thing you're not performing this right now, but like just doing it and having fun and yeah, just like improving, right? So I remember that was a blast. Those two, back to back days. That was back in what? Was that the end of 2013? No, the end of what? Yeah, I'm trying to retrack my Lindy journey. I think this was the beginning of 2014. And prior to that, I had done class with Clyde and Sam. We did the warm up. We went over drills for the 8 count and had to like swing at your partner. Went over our solo jazz drills. And those 2 nights were my first nights of just getting to really play with all of it. It's like a toy box. And you have the key and you unlock the toy box and you're like, what do I start with? There's all this fun stuff to utilize, and mesh together and then play with all these fun movement toys. So I remember that was my first time. And I almost wish in a way I can get a little bit back to some of that just innocent fun. Because I think now I'm so in the technical side of it where I get mad at myself if I repeat something too much, especially with my solo jazz training. If I like repeat, something and maybe I just use it as a home base step, I'm still like, no, like your brain's running out of things. You haven't even scratched the surface yet. Why are you running out of stuff and you're practicing right now? So I almost wish I could get back to that just unapologetic fun of not worrying about some of that.
I went through a phase of like, I say in my head 5 years, but it's probably longer than that. But I'm just going to say 5 years because that will make me a little bit happier. I went through a phase of like 5 years where if you saw me in a competition, you'd be like, that guy looks like he's going to die. Like, put that guy out of his misery. That guy looks so sad and pissed off at himself.
Oh no, it was visually on your face. So people were like,
just because
hey, man, that guy, he's having a bad run. Good luck in heat too.
Right. And I like, it's because I saw everything as a mistake, or I saw everything that didn't go according to what I wanted to happen as a mistake. And I saw everything that like, I basically just beat the crap out of myself that entire time, just trying to like better myself and losing track of that idea that especially in jazz dances that joy is an inherent ingredient. And if there's no joy in it, then you're missing an important ingredient and you probably shouldn't be cooking that for very long before you go to the store and buy some joy.
Yeah, you can't go to the store without joy. You can't go to the checkout with that little bit of joy. Yeah, you need the jar of joy.
The joy story, I like it. I wanted to go back to 2013, 2014 when you started. So seeing as you are a senior in college, we don't have to reveal your age, but that would put you as like a younger individual getting into Lindy Hop and things. A lot of people say, and one of our guests has said that young people are not interested in Lindy Hop, but yet you speak so. I mean, you're an ambassador of Lindy Hop, like literally, actually, and so you're like, I have to pass on this great legacy, and so I'm curious about where that spark and excitement comes from, and like what drew you into the Lindy Hop world.
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think the excitement came from initially, I know I talked about like the freedom of it and improving, right? That's one aspect. The other component I think was like when I was saying earlier, I used to do those jazz mixed with hip hop performances when I was younger. There was some untapped potential there that I never got to really explore until I did Lindy. So by the time I got there, I was like, finally, I have an outlet to explore that thing I did when I was younger that I never got to go back to, right? And even I think when I was a kid, like when the Chicken Noodle Soup song came out, and we were doing the Harlem Shake and the Chicken Noodle Soup dance. Like, my friends, like, they had the younger siblings. Yeah, they would have the hydrants would be open. Or, the younger siblings would be playing in the hydrant in the water, and the intro to the song was just the siren, right? The ooh, and then we would know right away, and we would just make a jam circle, start dancing, right? So that I never got to explore that again, right? Until I got to Lindy. That was like my outlet to just explore unapologetic fun, and just tapping into that feeling I had when I was younger of just those Harlem Shake, Chicken Noodle Soup dance circles, and the little recitals as a kid. So I got to tap back into it. I think looking back now, I think I was always longing to tap into it because part of me kind of moved through the motions of ballet without having any real soul in it, right? So I think it was for a long time I had just wanted to tap into that, and I think I like resented ballet a bit just because I was like, I want to get back to that, right? And I think I got into the heart and soul of ballet after one semester, like middle school, where I got like not as good of a grade as the other semesters, and I realized like, oh yeah, like I got to put more of myself in this. And I think because I got to that point with my ballet, and I was like, all right, you've done it for long enough now, like might as well utilize it as a tool and really invest yourself in it. I think that allowed me to earn the right to get back into that untapped potential that I felt when I was younger, right? By finally embracing ballet. And just the fact that was just part of my life, it was like, all right, now you get to move to this stage where you get to like not do the structured stuff and come over here and just like let loose.
I loved your head roll as you were talking about going through the motions. You're like going through the motions.
That was completely unconscious.
Yeah.
No, that's really funny. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Right. I did that. I think I was still thinking about jazz from earlier, the isolations. Yeah.
Sure. And so I love that. But it was, you could tell, speaking of the word like integration, like you're integrating these different ideas. You were talking about like Lindy Hop and hip hop being able to come together in like a Tetris style fashion. Sometimes we can't translate from dance style to dance style one to one, but you can take a spirit of something and throw it elsewhere, right? So it seems like you found the spirit of yourself and you're able to grow that in your ballet world, which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely feel privileged to, be able to get to a point where I can do that.
Yeah.
Today's guest, Brandon Barker, wanted to make sure that everyone out there knew about Black Men Feel, especially if you're a black man. Black Men Feel is a group that creates safe spaces for black men to be vulnerable, heal, and develop positive mental health practices. They have regular meetups so that black men can explore their pain and learn to support and love one another, especially themselves. So check out Black Men Feel. You can go to Instagram, Black Men Feel, all one word, and find the group. Brandon, when you think of yourself and various aspects of your identity, for instance, we've talked about the Alvin Ailey, we've talked about your contemporary work in your school, we've talked about your work in the swing dance scene, your life in the swing dance scene. Have you felt different in one space versus another? Is there anything you would like to share about being a black man in any of those arenas?
I guess it's weird. My dance journey, sorry, as I'm talking, I'm going to send a text to my mom. She sent a text and I get really paranoid when she's like, how's it going, huh? And I want to say like, I'm fine, I'm good. So, okay.
Yeah, feel free. We can pause it.
Oh, let's see. I think I can still go. So here we go. We're still rolling.
Multitasking.
Multitasking. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Multitasking. All right. So I feel like my dance journey in that sense has like gone in reverse, because I started like in predominantly Black spaces. And as I've gotten here to UMass, it's predominantly white. And I think all the way up until my junior year, I was like the only male, and also not the only Black person, but I was the only male. And, there was only about, when I started, like 6 Black people. And so, of course, the numbers have gone down because all of them except me and, well, no, they've all graduated. There's 2 incoming, female Black dancers that are there now. But yeah, so I'm a minority in 2 ways within, the UMass dance scene. And so that's been interesting. Like I said, I started my dance journey in Harlem. And then when I went to Ballet Tech, which is where I did middle school and where my strict ballet, modern, some contemporary training came in, it was predominantly Black, mostly Black students in my grade. And now that I look at it, I'm like, what a coincidence, because, they were pulling students from all over. So that easily could have been like, it was predominantly white. It just ended up being the circumstance made it predominantly Black, which is great. And so, in those spaces, of course, I think you're not thinking of race as a component so much because, you being Black in the space is normalized. You having agency in the space is totally normalized, and just, it's a thing, I'm back. Okay. Visually, I'm back. Audio wise, you've heard me this whole time, I hope, but okay. Yeah. So, it was just like feeling like you could take up space, when I was younger in Ballet Tech, and before that, middle school, it was just natural. Right. And so moving past that, high school as well. Also, I'd say that was a more fair balance of Black, white, but still predominantly Black. And so again, it was never a question of like, how much space should I take up, or, should I shy away from doing this because it's this type of setting? You don't really have those feelings, right? It is the setting that it is. And I think more so, I think for my journey, I was more focused on like, like social acceptance and like getting over social anxiety. And so that was more of a factor rather than like, I'm a Black man in this space, right? Because that had been normalized because you're just in a space that's predominantly Black. So more of my struggle was like getting over my social anxiety and like, not feeling like you have to always comedically perform for people or be the fun kind of up and coming guy who's always going to add energy. Like you can rest sometimes, right? So coming to terms with that. And then, so that I put all that to rest before I came to college, and it was like a nice clean slate. But yeah, college, the exact opposite again, right? Like I said in the beginning, I'm a minority in 2 ways, Black and male. So I think there was never anything really where I was in a specific situation where I can recall where it felt like passive aggressive or like there was a microaggression. I think I just observed the type of people, each female was, and was like, cool, I'll lean on like these 3 people as like, my friends. The rest, I think, were too disconnected, in terms of they're just talking about things I can't relate to. We're gonna walk our dog here, and then we're gonna, get like super wasted at this party. And then I think I might be going to Cancun this next weekend. Like, I just realized I was like, okay, I cannot relate to these people. I'm sticking with this small, tiny group here. So rather than, like, really like feeling it, like, gosh, I'm such an outsider compared to my other settings. It was more so just like sitting back, observing, and just figuring out what pocket you're going to sit in, right? Of, okay, she's from New York. She's from upstate New York, but still New York, no less. And so we have a lot in common. oh, she's from the city. We definitely have stuff in common. And she's, she said she went to LaGuardia. So she's been around a diverse group of students, and she is with them. And she also has, Algerian heritage. And so is more in touch with her own personal culture and is not so caught up in, white America and that kind of uppity fun lifestyle. So you realize those things about people and you're like, all right, I'm going with these guys. Right. And so, yeah, like I said, thankfully there was no uncomfortable moment where I was like, all right, it's not this group because they just gave me a huge microaggression and I feel some type of way. Right. So thankfully it wasn't that. I think what I did is I just offered up to each person like who I am. I'm a humorous person. I'm fun. I'm supportive. I offered that up. And I think wherever I saw it, given back to me and nicely welcomed to that group, I was like, all right, I'm going to stay with this, these people. There definitely was after that, right? Finding that group in that niche, there's definitely a sense of like, with certain people, you're like, I think this can't really go anywhere other than just we talk in the dance room and do like fun comments or I ask them, hey, what's the combo again? And they help me out. And that's it, right? You feel like it can't really go beyond that. Like they're so in their own world with things that this isn't going to be the friend you talk to outside of dance class, right? And you have a blast with. You're like, it's just going to be in this setting professionally, and that's it. And then there's some where you see that you can build something there, and I think they grow on you, you grow on them, and you're like, all right, we'll give this a shot in terms of like talking more frequently and like considering each other as friends, right? But I think there's some where there's a bit of, you understand that disconnect and you understand that it's just going to be like professional and like, hey, I'll help you out with this part of the combo, or if I ask you this in class, you can help me really quickly. And then, and you're like, all right, after that, we're just moving on, right? Again, I think as soon as I got outside of that, I was with what is now to date my most diverse group of friends ever, right? So I knew I had that to lean on. If anything ever went wrong, I have friends from India, Bangladesh, Navi, Mumbai. You have, of course, friends who are Black American, but also are Haitian. Some who are also Jamaican, and I'm Jamaican too, and getting more in touch with my Jamaican roots, and, you even have, friends, if they are white, like they're not like, well, this is weird. Like I'm actually a minority in this space. Like they didn't mind that. They didn't mind. They're like, all right, this is the group of friends that I have where I'm the minority. Like that's okay, right? So you felt super comfortable with them. So yeah, I knew I had that super diverse like melting pot of friends to lean on.
Integrated rhythm with Chisomo and Bobby.